Welcome to our online video series, Reading Hope in Trying Times. Our guest today is our good friend, Jonathan Merritt. Jonathan's a popular writer on religion, culture, and politics. He's an award-winning contributor to The Atlantic, a contributing editor for The Week, and is author of several critically acclaimed books, including Learning to Speak God from Scratch, Why Sacred Words Are Vanishing and How We Can Revive Them. Jonathan's published more than 3,500 articles in respected outlets such as the New York Times, USA Today, BuzzFeed, the Washington Post, and Christianity Today. So I think you should know that he's a prolific, very hard worker. As a respected voice, he regularly contributes to commentary to television, print, and radio news outlets, and has been interviewed by ABC World News and CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, NPR, PBS, and CBS 60 Minutes. As a collaborator or ghostwriter, Jonathan's worked with more than 50 books, with several titles landing on the New York Times, USA Today, and Wall Street Journal bestseller lists. Jonathan holds an MDiv from Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary, an M Master of Theology from Emory University's Candler School of Theology, and has done additional graduate work at the General Theological Seminary of the Episcopal Church in New York City. He's a recipient of numerous awards, including the Wilbur Award for Excellence in Journalism, the Religion News Association's Columnist of the Year Award, and the Englewood Review of Books Book of the Year Award. I'm also happy to say that Jonathan served as a featured speaker at several of the conferences that I've produced, and it's always such a pleasure to work with Jonathan, and I've got a great deal of respect for this guy, and I'm so glad to be working with him again today and have a time for a conversation amidst all this craziness.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Brian. Always, always, always happy to partner with you on anything. We always have such fun together.
No, absolutely. I was really looking forward to this conversation today. So, I mean, maybe we could start off by just, if you could share some general thoughts on, this craziness that we're going through and some reflections on that.
It's so funny. We are living in truly unprecedented times. And here's how I think about it. I often say that there are moments in life that are like the falling of a hammer. It's like an axe, right? And it splits life down the middle. And now everything in life is divided into two halves. There's the just before and the just after. And the skills that are needed to survive the just after are different than the skills needed to survive the just before. The spiritual disciplines that are needed to keep you afloat in the just after are different than the disciplines you needed in the just before. And so we are all emerging. We are being birthed into a new normal, a new reality, and we are going to have to learn to walk again. I think many of us, spiritually, economically, in our jobs, in our family lives, in our ecclesiologically, in our churches. We have no idea. The church, I think, is going to look very, very different after this age of disruption sort of dissipates, if it does indeed completely dissipate. And so I find that right now, one of the feelings that I have generally is disorientation. I don't know which way is up. Everything is reversed. Hugging and kissing can be deadly. That's a reversal. Avoiding interaction with your grandparents or your grandchildren is now an act of love. It's these reversals that have happened that have left me so disorienting. And so I think I'm feeling like a lot of people. I am eager for the just after, to emerge in it so I can begin to figure out what it means to walk again.
Those are really amazing analogies, Jonathan. I so agree with what you're saying, and appreciate your perspective on this. Talk about opposites. You pointed them out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that in this moment, the things that were good for us are bad for us, and the things that were bad for us are good for us. Avoiding community is good for us. not going to, we're recording this. I don't know when it will air, but we're recording this in Holy Week. Not going to church on Easter is the best thing you can do on Sunday morning. I mean, when have we ever been able to say that and it's been true? It's crazy. It's crazy. And so the problem is that so much of life is lived by instinct. It's lived by muscle memory. And now all of that instinct, all of that muscle memory, all of the things that we have spent lifetimes training ourselves to do without even thinking, to nurture a life worth living, we don't serve us anymore. We have to question our instincts and our impulses at every turn. And I think that means that there's a certain fruit that comes from that disorientation. It's the fruit of anxiety. It's the fruit of anger.
No, you know what I think it is? I think it's the fruit of agility.
Yeah.
I mean, to the extent that we can be agile, through this and flexible and be able to adapt and change is incredibly important right now.
Well, and and things are changing. It's so funny. 2 weeks ago, they said, you don't need to wear a mask unless you're sick. Now they're saying you need to wear a mask even if you're not sick. It's like the rules are changing daily on what to do, what not to do, how to exist. And so that leaves a lot of people, I think me included, feeling very gun shy, just about ordinary everyday things like how do you go to the grocery store?
So speaking of which, I mean, you're in Manhattan, in the epicenter of all this. I'm in New Jersey, which isn't too far away. I'm curious as to how you've been experiencing, life in Manhattan in this.
It's funny because I've left. I'm now actually talking to you from a farmhouse in upstate New York.
Are you really? Okay. I didn't realize that. Good for you.
I had drawn a bit of a red line and I said, look, I can be kind of claustrophobic and I live in a 1-bedroom apartment and by myself. And I said, look, if there's talk of a lockdown, you have to get out. It's not going to be healthy for you to exist here. And so a couple of weeks ago, they began to talk about a lockdown, stay-at-home orders, and I transitioned upstate. And I
Good
come
for
here.
You. I'm really glad you did that.
But it is like night and day. I mean, if you go into New York now, my friends send me pictures every day. It's like I Am Legend. It's like some weird dystopian movie where all these busy streets are tumbleweeds and, plastic bags flying around. There's nobody. It's eerie. It's quiet. And it's a strange environment. And there's a lot of sadness, a lot of confusion. I've got a friend right now who is a good friend of mine in New York who's in ICU on a ventilator, and she's fighting for her life. She's
I
31 years old.
Your post about that.
So, we're getting to a death toll now where just about everybody knows somebody who has died or has come close to it. I mean, I've got 10 or more friends who have contracted it, and some of them are really mild. They lost their smell and taste, and some of them are in ICU.
Wow. It's pretty crazy.
Yes, truly.
So in the past, you've gone through some challenging times for various reasons. And I know you learned a lot from that and you reflected a lot on that. Mm-hmm. How has that helped you now?
Yeah. I think that, my life has been, in some ways, a series of traumas, from trauma to trauma to trauma, and since childhood. And that includes abusive relationships, death, sadness, and even most recently, as I mentioned, in some of my work, more recent work, but a real battle and struggle with chronic pain, with depression, with anxiety disorder. And I think that in some ways, as terrible as that is, and you would never wish these things on anyone, that anyone would have to go through them, it can be a bit of a boot camp for situations like this.
Isn't that the case? That's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, it's because, you have someone who's never had a difficult day in their life, and right now they don't have any skills and tools, the skills and tools that I have acquired, by the way, against my own will, I acquired tools and skills in all of my times of darkness that I can now retrieve in this dark time.
That is so totally true. And I've had that repeated to me in completely different contexts. Just to give you an example, I was interviewed for like a CEO job of a startup. And in the conversation, they were talking about another person who basically, as the interviewer, the venture capitalist told me, lived from a silver spoon all his life. Whereas like I'd been through the ringer a few times, and so he was valuing that, experience, just the same kind of thing that you're saying is that, by going through the dark times and learning from that, surviving from that, and thriving after that is incredibly important and useful.
Yeah, you're right. It is different when when the unchosen forces of your life have shaped you into a person who knows how to survive. You do have a kind of skill set that makes it easier for you to survive in a moment just like this, I think.
So you just wrote an incredible article on CT that I'd love for you to talk about a little bit, if you could.
Yeah. Yeah, I wrote a piece, and it was actually an adaptation from a chapter in my book, Learning to Speak God from Scratch, but it was a Palm Sunday article. And in it, I talked about basically going through a period where I didn't know what was going on with my health. I woke up one morning, I couldn't feel my hands. It became chronic pain all over my body. I went to see doctors all over the country. They all said, we don't know, we don't understand it, test after test after test, all kinds of medicines that I was put on that didn't help or maybe helped marginally. And then shortly after that, I had read a text in the Bible, the Palm Sunday text, which, lots of churches read just last week. And I saw this kind of experience of disappointment. And I think disappointment with God and who God is and how God works. At the start of the story, you have the crowds embracing Jesus and saying, Hosanna, which means save us now. And by the end of the story, the crowds are shouting, crucify him. They're angry at the person they thought would save them. That when Jesus turns out to be something other than they expected Jesus to be, they couldn't handle it. That Jesus actually didn't meet their expectations, and so they ended up disappointed. And I felt that in my own life. And I think there's a lot of people right now who feel disappointed with their own life. And they may actually feel disappointed with the things that God is letting in their theology happen right now. And so I was really writing about this to make the bigger point that I don't think God attempts to disappoint us. I think God attempts to disillusion us or make space for the gift of disillusionment. Disillusionment is just the loss of illusion. It's the thing that happens in your life when you take a lie about God or the world or the way that things should work or your own sense of safety in the case of this pandemic, and you replace that lie with a truth. And I say in the article, disillusionment occurs when God shatters our fantasies and tears down our idols and dismantles our cardboard cutouts of who God is. It's the thing that occurs when we discover that God doesn't conform to our expectations, that God exists as a mystery outside our expectations. We have a really good common friend who also is participated in a lot of your writing conferences, Barbara Brown Taylor, and she wrote a collection of sermons that she put out years and years ago, 30 years ago, called God in Pain. And in that book, she says that experiences of disillusionment are always painful, but they're never bad because they force us to shed the lies we've mistaken for truth. And so she writes, disillusioned, we find out what is not true, and we are set free to seek what is if we dare, to turn away from the God who is supposed to be in order to seek the God who is. And so I really tried to write in that essay, and I'd love to read a little piece right at the end. I'd love to read just the ending about what it means to be on this dopamine roller coaster of expecting something and predicting something and then to come crashing down. Would that be okay?
Oh, absolutely. That'd be wonderful.
So I close it by saying here, ultimately, the Palm Sunday narrative is not about donkeys and palm branches at all. It's a reminder that placing expectations on God based on our wants is a recipe for resentment, but nurturing openness to divine mystery is a workable, a sustainable framework for faith. I've learned to manage my pain disorder, but it has persisted despite my best efforts, and yet I refuse to let disappointment sever my relationship with God. And over time, I've begun to uncover and shed illusions. I'm dismantling mirages I've constructed around productivity, identity, self-worth. No longer can I work 12 to 14-hour days or pretend that who I am is enhanced by how much I produce, or ground my sense of worth in accomplishment and accolades, or pretend that God will keep me healthy or heal my every ache and pain. I have traded these lies for a truth that says in times of difficulty, God offers us presence and not a parachute. This exchange has transformed my disappointment into disillusion, and disillusion has turned out to be a horrible, wonderful gift. What we experience as disappointment is an invitation to give up holding tight to what we hope is true, to stop casting God in our image, to let God be who God is, not who we wish God would be. And the choice is ours. Who knows? If we decide to step off that dopamine roller coaster, maybe, just maybe, we'll find ourselves at the foot of a cross, giving up all we have for the one who gave up everything for us.
That's really wonderful. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me read it.
So one of the things that, your article made me think about is the problematic word save.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus saves.
Mm-hmm.
Hosanna, save us.
Mm-hmm.
They had an expectation of what save meant.
Right.
It's completely different, in my view, than what really God and Jesus save us from.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think one of the key phrases in that essay, in that chapter in my book, was the contrast between salvation as presence versus salvation as a parachute. A lot of people think if you get saved, if God saves, God gets you out of the pain, out of the difficulty. God gets you out of the distress, out of the pandemic. God gets you out of the discomfort. That God becomes kind of, as I say, in a heavenly bellhop who's just waiting on you to, hey, get me out of this. And then God serves God's purpose. I think that salvation is ultimately can be boiled down to God's presence. That there is the essence and the presence of capital L love that sits with us and cries with us when the wheels have fallen off. That to me is salvation. It saves us from our aloneness. It saves us from our despair. It doesn't necessarily save us from circumstances. But I think once we begin to accept that that is what salvation looks like, it allows us to sort of unfurl our fingers around our own sense of disappointment that comes from God not doing what we think God should do on our behalf.
I totally agree. And, for me, presence in this context, as you said, it's not circumstances. It's really God helping to say, okay, well, that happened. Whatever that is, what do we do now?
Yeah.
How do we react to the circumstances that have been dealt to us?
Yeah.
And that's, to me, where God has an impact. I mean, at least in my life, that's been the case. Okay, what do we do now?
Yeah.
After this bad thing that's happened.
Psychologists will say one of the key factors that determines whether or not you can process traumatic times and experiences is whether or not there was the presence of what they would call an empathic witness, which means someone who is present, who sees the thing. Now, maybe they only see it via a recounted story, right? You're a sexual abuse victim maybe, and you recount the story. But somebody who is able to say, I see that, and that's not right. If you have an empathic witness, someone who will acknowledge the pain, who will offer presence in the pain, and who can offer empathy in the midst of the pain, you can survive trauma. Salvation from God is the salvation that comes from an empathic witness that says you can process your pain because you have presence.
That's really powerful. That's really powerful. So one of the things we've been doing in these interviews is talking about different resources and things that we can look to today, to help through all this craziness. And so what do you have in terms of suggestions on that front?
Something that I've been doing, I'll tell you, I'll give you two things. One won't be surprising, but it's a good reminder. The other may be surprising. So for the good reminder meditation, difficult circumstances like this will often have the effect of, it will lead us to dissociate. Have you had anybody in your life, or maybe you felt this way, where you say something like, this doesn't even feel like real life, right? Or people will say like, I feel like I'm in a movie right now. That's the psychological term for that is dissociation. You're not you, you're almost outside of you. You're almost observing you. Right. It's this kind of where realism becomes surrealism in real time. Right. And so this dissociation, and when you are dissociated, you can have a whole bunch of problems in terms of processing the events and really living in your skin. And so I do a meditation practice every day where I begin to kind of center on my breath, and I place my right hand on my heart where I can feel my heart beat. And by centering on my breath and feeling my heartbeat, it's a reminder that I'm here, that I'm safe, and that I am alive. And I'll begin to observe the sensations in my body, and I just, that where my life force, my energy is outside of myself, it's expanded, it will start to come back and settle back in again. I can become reincarnated, so to speak.
Wonderful, wonderful.
So I do that one. I think the other thing that may be surprising to some people is I have begun to read books of blessings. I love John O'Donohue. A lot of people are reading that right now, to bless the space between us. And I also have been reading a lot of blessing books from Jan Richardson. And because reading is part of this, I'd love to read a blessing from Jan Richardson that's been sort of saving my life right now.
That'd be awesome, Jonathan.
So this is a blessing that and I would encourage everybody, you can Google this actually and find this. If you're listening to this and you want a tool, a centering tool or a processing tool, this one's great. This is a tool from Jan Richardson. It's called A Blessing for When the World is Ending. And here's what it says. Look, the world is always ending somewhere. Somewhere the sun has come crashing down. Somewhere it has gone completely dark. Somewhere it has ended with the gun, the knife, the fist. Somewhere it has ended with the slammed door, the shattered hope. Somewhere it has ended with the utter quiet that follows the news from the phone, the television, the hospital room. Somewhere it has ended with a tenderness that will break your heart. But listen, this blessing means to be anything but morose. It has not come to cause you despair. It is simply here because there is nothing a blessing is better suited for than an ending. Nothing that cries out more for a blessing than when the world is falling apart. So this blessing will not fix you. It will not mend you. It will not give you false comfort. It will not talk to you about one door opening when another closes. This blessing will simply sit itself beside you among the shards and gently turn your face toward the direction from which the light will come, gathering about you as the world begins again.
Wow, that's just so, I can see why you like that so much. Short and to the point and very profound.
And the blessings that are in these books. I never even really until a few months ago discovered that like blessings were a thing. They were a genre. It's almost like a blending between a prayer and a poem and like a sermon or something.
Yeah,
All into one. And the language is not restrictive in terms of the language for like the divine or God. You can find God in there, right? It talks about light. So they're also very capacious and inviting. So just about anyone can access blessings. And I find that, as John O'Donohue says, to bless the space between us can be a powerful tool for processing times like these.
I think I need to find some of those and repost them.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
So, your world this spring dramatically changed. Just you had lots of speaking and conferences and things like that, just like I did, that were planned. So I know one of the things you've done is launch a book discussion group.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that? And, are there other things that you've newly invented, design on the fly kind of a thing that you put in place?
Yeah. I have found something that's really, really helpful to people is finding ways to get as close to the thing that you really want and need as possible. So we cannot solve our problems, but we can foster proximity to the solution. We can't answer our questions right now, but we can get proximity to the answer. So for example, one of the things that we need, one of the things that would solve the problem of loneliness, one of the things that would solve the problem of isolation is connection, community. Well, when we can't do that, how do we foster it? One of the ways we foster it is what you're doing with this, which I think is magnificent. It's just creating, it's getting as close as possible. I mean, it would be even better than this if you and I could be in a room together with a glass of bourbon and a few of our friends who are watching right now physically. That would be wonderful. But guess what? We can't do that. So how do we gain proximity to that? Just like this.
Well, it's just like the lunch that you and I had together last June in Madison, New Jersey, right? Where we actually had some time to talk, about some deep things. And this today gives us another chance to talk about, some pretty deep and meaningful things. And it's like, it's kind of interesting to me that this is a forcing function. This whole coronavirus and isolation thing is a forcing function.
Yes.
To let us have conversations that we wouldn't otherwise be having.
That's exactly right. It's exactly right.
Which is powerful.
And that's the kind of hidden gift in the curse of everything that's going on. The curse is not a gift, but the curse can be mined for gifts. That's a subtle distinction.
Well, it's lemonade out of lemons.
That's right. And I think there are a lot of people who their perspective is they'll say pain is a gift. No, pain is not a gift. Don't go to a cancer ward, go to a COVID ward and say pain is a gift. Pain is not a gift, but you can often mine gifts from pain. And so one of the gifts that we mine from this pain is the ability to have conversations we might not otherwise have. So I do that a lot. I'm having happy hours on Instagram Live. Conversations with people I haven't done before, where I get a glass of wine and I have a conversation with somebody. I'm going to be doing this week. I'm going to launch a breakfast club where I'm going to bring some interesting folks on, around 11:30 Eastern. I'm going to start having morning conversations with a cup of coffee.
Excellent.
I want to do some meditation things where I want to bring some folks on to do meditation. So I'm planning to do a bit more of that in the coming days and weeks, to try to get as close as I can to proximity for those things. And I'm also using this to write. Isolation can be a spark for inspiration. And so I would say to people, don't waste your isolation. Don't waste it. You don't want to emerge from all this isolation saying, I hadn't stewarded it well. I didn't listen to the lessons it could have taught me. And it's teaching us to grieve. It's teaching us how much we love each other. It's teaching us the value we place on physical and even religious communities. And I think there's also the ability to realize that solitude and isolation is a great cauldron for producing really inspirational work, for helping you to tell stories you might not stop to tell, for helping you to sit and reflect on experiences that you've rushed past. And so I'm trying to make good use of it without, by the way, falling off onto the other cliff, which is the logical end of the addiction to productivity, to turn the pandemic into a self-improvement project. I'm not there. You have to be between those guardrails of rushing through or turning it into something that it shouldn't be. And I think between those is the space where we can mine the gifts of the period of life that we found ourselves in.
Wow. What excellent advice. I know some of the writers that I've spoken with, they're having trouble writing right now.
Yeah.
I think they're so overwhelmed, and anxious about things. But, I think you've been able to use some of the tools that you've acquired to be able to put you in a place to make this optimal, very productive.
And I bet a lot of people, because of your platform, I bet a lot of people who are watching this are writers or they're interested in writing. What I have said to people that I've coached, because I have a lot of friends who are struggling too, and I will say, you're not writing in this time? And they'll say, I'm too angry to write, or I'm too afraid to write. That they've got these emotions that are the block. And what I say is, good, write about the anger, write about the fear. It may be that the thing you thought you were supposed to write about is not the thing you should be writing about right now. It may be that there's a thing before the thing. Maybe the obstacle is the outlet. And so I'm trying to help people see that just because you can't write that book or that article that you thought, well, now's the time to get around to it because I'm experiencing these emotions, write about the emotions. Write about how doggone pissed off you are that you're having to live in this world. Write out about how angry you are that your mother is on a ventilator. Write about how mad you are that certain political forces have conspired in such a way to lead to an unpreparedness to deal with this. Write about those things. Find the emotional hotspots, a phrase we're using now. Find the emotional hotspots and dwell there for a moment. So I think that oftentimes people who can't write, if they will merely redirect their attention, will find that the floodgates will open and they will find some inspiration.
Well, I think what you're, revealing is this is kind of a prime time.
Yeah, I think so.
Because there are things happening to us now that don't normally happen to us.
Yeah, that's
right. And
right.
not taking advantage of the reflection on that.
That's right.
Is a missed opportunity.
Yes. Yes.
So thank you for bringing that up.
Yes. Thank you. Appreciate it.
So Jonathan, in addition to being a great writer, I know you read a great deal. And I know you've read a great number of outstanding authors. So what are you reading right now?
Well, I'll tell you, I've been curating my reading for the moment. And I think that there are 3 types of books that every writer, I would say every spiritual person, but for sure every spiritual writer should be reading in this moment. One we've already mentioned, blessing books. I just have found those to be there. It's like a release for the pressure valve, right? It's an exhale. And so if we are feeling so overwhelmed with information, the answer is not to find new ways to stuff yourself full of other information. Sometimes it's just to release, to exhale. And I find blessing books are great for that. The other is sacred books. And when I say sacred books, for some people, that's going to be the Bible. Or if you're not Christian, it could be the Quran or the Course in Miracles. It could be anything. For some people, it might be a devotional, or it might be a memoir, a spiritual memoir. But it's something, when I say a sacred book, what I mean is that the core of it is the subject matter is something that is greater than us and outside of us. So that could be God or Jesus, but it could also be community. It could be, I've got one of my fellow quarantiners here in the house is reading Gabby Bernstein's The Universe Has Your Back. The universe can be that thing that is outside of you and bigger. However you conceive of that, right? It could be about family, but it's not just about you. It's not like the 10 things you need to do to launch your business. It's conversations about the things that are beyond us and outside of us that we are finding ourselves drawn to or called to. So I think that that sacred books are huge. And then I have really been trying to read what I call our escape books. So let's say you're reading a book that is a sacred book and you're going to it because you need inspiration, or you read a blessing book because what you need is you need reprieve, you need exhale. Those are pretty high stakes. You're going and you're asking it to give you something. Well, can you read something that doesn't have as high of stakes? I call those escape books. And escape books are like, it could be a collection of short stories, or it could just be a fiction book. And in fact, I don't have one here, but I would show you. I just read one of my first ones that I read, which was recommended to me by another writer named Shauna Niequist. It was called Circe by Margaret, or I can't remember the author, but a woman who it's a Greek mythology. It's basically a feminist imagining of a minor character in Homer's The Odyssey. And it's a beautiful book, a powerful book. But like Greek mythology is so far removed from my world, it doesn't feel real.
What was the name of the book again?
It's called Circe, C-I-R-C-E, and it's gorgeously written. Just
C-I-R-C-E.
C-I-R-C-E. It's a beautiful book. And then I just finished that one. And so I wanted to read something else. And this new escape book, a lot of people have read this because it's a #1 New York Times bestseller, but it was recommended to me by another author that some people will know named Beth Moore, who just totally loves this book. But it's called Where the Crawdads Sing.
Oh, yeah.
And I just started last night. So it looks like somebody got murdered and it looks like it happens in the bayou. I don't live in the bayou. I haven't spent a lot of time in the bayou. I don't live in a marshland. I live in an urban jungle. And so something that will give you a moment to not be here. So you, just in the same way that you don't want to dissociate, you also don't want to implode. So you can do both of those things. You can implode under the weight of reality, or you can just run away from reality and numb out. You can dissociate from reality. You don't want to do either one of those things. So an escape book will keep you from imploding. It will give you a minute to venture into a world without disconnecting from yourself. You're not disembodying. It will give you a minute to escape into another world. And then I think blessing books and sacred books will help you, as I said before, reincarnate, which I think can be an important practice.
Well, it sounds like we ought to read some more Buechner books, don't you think?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Listen, I've been reading a lot of Buechner. In fact, what was the one that I read on him recently? Somebody had asked me to pull something on a passage that was being preached the week before Palm Sunday. But I'll tell you, with Buechner, anytime just about I find myself reflecting on a text, he's almost always written something on it that I need to read before I go any further. It's like I read the Bible and then next stop is Frederick Buechner.
Wow.
What did he say about that character? What did he say about that value or virtue? What did he say about that text? I always start there. So I have every book he's ever written. Of course, some things are online. And I think he is just a resource that I can't live without.
That this really puts it into perspective really well, Jonathan.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, the things he wrote on, like you said, biblical characters and kind of like all kinds of different topics. When I first read them, I thought, oh my goodness, I'd never thought of it that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very unique and profound perspectives.
For sure. For sure.
Well, I really want to thank you for spending some time. I think that your wisdom beyond your years, your insights that you have into things, Jonathan, are so very helpful in these times. So thank you for spending some time together. And, I look forward to ways we can collaborate going forward.
Oh, the pleasure is mine, and it's always mine, Brian. Anytime you want me to join you, you just let me know.
Will do.
Right.
All right. Thanks again.